The story kicks off with Amy giving us the rundown on her family, the Croods, who are total cave dwellers. They spend almost all their time in a cave, only coming out when they need to hunt for food. They're pretty much the last survivors around, though they used to have neighbors back in the day. But most of those neighbors got wiped out by wild animals, and the Croods only made it because Amy's dad's strict rules keep them safe. Grug, the dad, starts the morning by shooing away wild beasts from the front of the cave. Right after that, Amy pops out. Next thing you know, Sandy, the baby sister, grabs onto a massive mosquito, so Ugga, the mom, has to chase after her. The brother, Thunker, is too scared to step outside. But the second Grug makes an animal call, Thunker dashes out, showing off his wild instincts. Finally comes Grandma, and they all head out to hunt for breakfast. They spot a huge bird to steal an egg from, and while it's distracted, Grug flips a rock to pick who goes after the food. Thunker bolts to snag the egg, but the bird snatches it right back. Then Ugga unleashes Sandy to go wild and chase the bird down. A couple of squirrels temporarily steal the egg. Luckily, Grandma grabs it back and bolts until a group of lizards tackles her. Amy is up next, grabbing the egg and tossing it over to her dad. By accident, they wake up a creature that immediately starts hunting them down. So Grug just chucks the whole family onto the back of an elephant. That's how they manage to break away, and once they're back at the cave, everyone finally gets a tiny bite of the egg except Grug, who settles for just a single drop. Seeing the sun going down, the family heads back inside, except Amy, who climbs up a rock wall just to catch the sunset. Her dad yells for her to get down, and they end up getting chased by another creature, but they make it back safely. They get into a huge fight over Amy hating cave life and refusing to stick to her dad's strict rules. After that, Grug tells a bedtime story about how doing anything new or different will literally kill you, and then they call it a night. Right in the middle of the night, Amy wakes up, spots a strange glowing light, and sneaks out after it, finding Gary with a flaming torch. She checks out the boy, who introduces himself as Gary. They get into an argument, and the fire starts fading away. Gary manages to spark it back up. Amy is totally blown away and tries to force him to make more fire for her. He shows off his pet sloth. Gary warns her that the world is coming to an end and asks her to tag along, but she can't leave her family, so he hits the road. Her dad tracks her down, and they head back to the cave. Amy tells her family about meeting a boy, which totally confuses everyone, so they ground her. But before they can really punish her, a massive earthquake hits, and they rush back toward the cave while giant rocks start falling everywhere. Once the shaking stops, they see that their home cave is completely crushed. Looking beyond the rocks, they spot a vibrant forest and get chased by that beast again, forcing them to leap right off a high cliff. After wandering through the thick jungle, they run into a pack of aggressive monkeys that beat up Grug, but the monkeys scatter when a big colorful tiger shows up, sending the Croods running for their lives too. When night falls, a swarm of flesh-eating birds swoops in and starts eating other animals whole. Everyone panics, but Amy remembers how to blow a horn signal to call Gary, who rushes over to rescue them. He quickly sparks a fire, which scares the terrifying birds away. The Croods think Gary and this glowing fire stuff are totally weird, believing fire is actually a chunk of the sun. Since they have no clue how fire works, they accidentally start burning everything around them, even accidentally cooking a huge stalk of corn that shoots off like a rocket and turns into giant popcorn. Gary tries to sneak away from this crazy family, but Amy grabs him, refusing to let him leave. They figure it's best to force Gary to tag along until they can track down a new cave. So Grug stuffs Gary into a hollow log to keep him locked up, but even while stuck, Gary tells them they should head toward the high mountain because the end of the world is coming. Once Grug sees there's no turning back safely, he finally agrees that everyone should go to the mountain. On the way there, they bicker and fight non-stop until they're all totally exhausted and starving. Grug spots another bird and tells Thunker to go get it, but both of them mess up and miss the egg. Then Grug brings back a tiny scorpion for the family to share, but Grandma is still starving and literally tries to eat Thunker instead. Gary tries to sneak off with his pet's help. But Amy catches him in the act, so he admits he's starving and asks if she'll help him actually hunt real food. So the two of them head off together. Gary sets up a smart trap, and they try to use a bird call to trick one bird so it falls right into the trap. But things blow up in their faces when the teens mess up, and the bird catches on that it's a trick. The bird flings Gary super far away right back into his log and goes chasing after Amy. In the end, the bird stumbles into the trap. The Croods cook up the bird and go totally wild devouring it, which completely terrifies Gary. After eating, Grug sits everyone down for a story about a little tigress who broke the rules by leaving her cave, causing her home to get destroyed. Her family ended up homeless, wandered off with a shady stranger, and died horribly. Since that story was a total downer, Gary steps in to tell a much better one. In his tale, a brave tigress escapes her dark cave, reaches a cliff, sees a magical light, and leaps for it. Instead of crashing, she ends up flying all the way to tomorrow, a magical place where everything is amazing. Grug says a place like that isn't real, insisting that what they really need is a nice, safe, dark cave. After that, he tucks the family in for sleep. When they wake up the next morning, they see giant cracks opening up all over the ground. Amy asks Gary how the tigress learned to fly, and Gary says he'll spill the secret only if she busts him out of the log. So she shoves her brother Thunker right into the log, breaking it open and setting Gary free. Grug tries to charge after Gary, but ends up wrecking his bare feet on a bunch of super sharp rocks. Meanwhile, Gary is totally chill because he actually wears shoes. Grug tries to keep chasing him, but the pain gets too bad and he gives up. To help everyone get across the rough terrain, Gary insists on ditching the log and making shoes for the whole family, which Amy absolutely loves. Further down the trail, they run into those monkeys again, who give them bananas this time, and they walk right past the dangerous tiger by walking on huge wooden stilts. Along the way, Gary finally explains the rest of the story about how the tigress flew to tomorrow. They slide down a steep cliff on makeshift boards, though Grug stubbornly refuses to join in. They feel rain for the very first time and splash around in a lake. When Grug jumps down into the water, he lands right next to that same tiger at the bottom. Later on, Gary hands out seashells to use as noisemakers, suggesting they split up to explore and cover more ground faster. But Grug strictly insists that the family must stick together no matter what. Right on cue, a massive quake hits, blasting them all in different directions down into a giant rocky maze. The ladies enter a zone full of man-eating flowers, while Thunker ends up alone, getting terrified by a little crocodog. Amy lands in a gorgeous crystal field with Gary watching over her, while Grug gets totally lost walking in endless circles. The ladies sneak past the killer plants by wearing flower disguises, and Thunker ends up making friends with the crocodog. Amy finds Gary tossing flowers at her, and the two of them escape the maze together to catch a view of the sun. Before long, the rest of the family shows up, except for Grug, who blows his seashell horn for help. Ugga heads back into the maze to go get him. Most of the family climbs up a giant tree and hangs out, but Grug refuses to come up and feels totally left out and miserable. Even Ugga gets fed up with his stubbornness, heading up the tree to thank Gary for everything. Looking down, the group sees the ground splitting open with glowing lava everywhere. They climb up to the top branches to get a clear view of the night sky and stars. Amy is totally amazed and says she wants to stay with Gary forever. Gradma wants to tag along too, but Ugga reminds everyone they can't leave Grug behind. But Gradma scoffs that Grug doesn't even know how to protect them, joking that if he ever came up with a single good idea, she'd drop dead of a heart attack. Since Grug overheard the whole thing, it gives him a huge burst of motivation to prove them wrong. The next morning, he wears a crazy wig and tries to pitch all kinds of weird inventions like a rolling rock vehicle and even a portable rock house. Unsurprisingly, every single idea fails horribly. He admits he did all that to win back his family's respect. After that mess, they keep hiking until they finally get close to the mountain. Suddenly, another massive earthquake strikes, and Grug orders everyone into a nearby cave, but the family refuses because they want to go with Gary toward the sun instead. This makes Grug snap, and he goes flying after Gary in a rage. Both Grug and Gary end up falling into a deep tar pit, sinking fast with no way out. They talk about how Gary's parents' last words were for him to stop hiding in darkness and actually go out to live his life. Hearing that gives Gary an idea on how to pull them out of the pit. They build a fake tigress puppet using belt and debris to trick a nearby creature into coming over. The real big tiger sees the puppet, gets tricked, and pulls both of them out of the tar. Afterward, the Croods dash toward the mountain peak and catch a glimpse of a gorgeous new world, but giant land explosions burst out, blocking their path. With a massive cliff blocking the way and dark ash closing in, the family runs into a temporary cave for shelter, leaving Grug standing outside alone. That's when Grug realizes he's done with hiding in caves and darkness, deciding to take a real risk for the very first time. He throws Gary across the massive canyon to test the distance, and once he sees Gary land safely, he launches every member of his family across one by one. When it's Amy's turn, they share a tight hug and finally make peace before he launches her over to safety, too. With only Grug left behind, the mountain collapses into smoke and debris while his family watches helplessly from the other side. Down in the dark ash, Grug runs around until he ducks into a small cave for shelter. He figures out how to light a fire on his own. The big tiger wanders into the cave, scared, and the two team up like old buddies. Grug hears the family blowing their horn signal, giving him a crazy idea to lure a flock of those flesh-eating birds using fire. He hitches the birds to a giant ribcage skeleton so their wings can lift him off the ground. On the way up, he swoops down to scoop up the other animals, but the skeleton frame gets jammed in the rock face. But after pulling with all his strength, he breaks free just in time. Right behind him, a massive dust cloud explosion hits, launching them across the gap. On the sunlit side, the family mourns and blows their horn shell. Against all odds, Grug crash lands on their side and walks out of the smoke, where Amy runs up and gives him a huge hug. The whole family beams with pride over what he pulled off and pulls everyone into a massive group hug. In the end, they settle down on a gorgeous beach paradise, living peacefully alongside all kinds of crazy creatures. Even that scary beast that chased them at the start ends up becoming a family pet.
Please like and subscribe.